A little more than a week from Election Day. Is there a reason for Detroiters to make a change in the mayor's office? The challenger, Anthony Adams, is here to make his case. And from the redistricting maps to vaccine mandates, our roundtable is ready to go. Today is Sunday, October 24th, 2021, and this is Flashpoint. Hi, welcome to Flashpoint. We come to you this morning wondering why debates are so hard to come by these days. Mayor Mike Duggan made it clear he had no intention of debating challenger Anthony Adams. The mayor says it's because Adams has run a hate-filled campaign. Well, Mike Duggan's been around politics a long time. I don't know that he hasn't heard nasty campaign rhetoric before. It looks to many to be yet another page from what's become the incumbent's playbook. We saw it with Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters, neither of whom were willing to tangle with John James in their Senate races. And there is clearly sound political strategy at work here. Why give your opponent's campaign any more oxygen than you absolutely have to? Well, and I am clearly in the debate business and am hardly a dispassionate bystander, but it seems to be a fairly healthy exercise for elected leaders to have to defend their record and their future plans against someone who thinks they've got better ones, even if, like Duggan, they mopped up in the primary. Instead, we head to an election day a week from this coming Tuesday without a side-by-side comparison. Anthony Adams, though, did accept our invitation to be here this morning. He'll join me in just a moment. And a little later on, our roundtable will take stock not only of this election, but election days to come through the lens of the new maps put forth by the Redistricting Commission. It's all today on Flashpoint. Well, Anthony Adams is a very familiar face in Detroit civic life. He's been everything from the president of the Detroit School Board to the deputy mayor, but he's got his eye on one office he hasn't held. His is the other name you'll see on the ballot on November 2nd as he hopes to somehow knock off Mike Duggan, who had a frankly prohibitive showing in the primary. But Anthony Adams is my guest today. Anthony, very good to have you. I don't like to spend a lot of time debating debates. The mayor has said that you have been running a campaign that has been, as he put it, 100% hate and divisiveness. But I know you're as disappointed as I am that I don't have you both here.
Well, I certainly have to laugh at this characterization of my campaign, but that's something I would expect. Here he's facing the most qualified candidate he has ever run against. Former executive assistant to the mayor, former deputy mayor, interim director of the water department, president of the Detroit Board of Education, as well as having served as general counsel, eminently qualified to discuss any and every issues impacting the city of Detroit in a responsible manner, I might add.
Well, in your defense, I suppose it's hard to get elected if your campaign slogan is Mike Duggan hasn't been that bad. But I want to start with your chance to skip past hate and divisiveness. Give me an example of something you think Mike Duggan has done well that you would continue in your administration.
Well, I mean, I can't really give him too much credit for anything, quite frankly. You know, he came out of bankruptcy and was given a clean slate to operate the city. Never really had to operate the city under the constraints of previous mayors. And so he had a really one way to do things, which other mayors have not had. And so it's easy to manage in that kind of environment. But we see when the metal meets the road, when you have serious issues impacting housing. You know, he's completely failed to address the housing issue. We continue to lose population in our city. He said that he should be judged by how he retains and grows the population in the city of Detroit. The population has dropped. The only population that's grown in the city is in the central business district, which is comprised primarily of white citizens who moved into the city of Detroit. When you talk about transportation, he's a complete failure. He's actually cutting transportation services in the city where people desperately need transportation services. And then recently, the University of Michigan released a report which said that we have more than 90,000 substandard housing units in the city of Detroit. We have more people renting in the city of Detroit that actually own their homes. The Detroit Future Cities report said that we lost 11 middle-income neighborhoods. So how can I give him credit for anything when the metrics of how you judge his performance have been miserable?
Well, so much for skipping past divisiveness then. Anthony, you've been around elections.
But that's not divisive, though. This is...
You can't find one thing that you think he's done well. Now, I don't want to take up. I don't want to be put in the position of taking up the mayor's case. He's worked hard on mortgage. He created the Detroit home mortgage program. We've knocked down a lot of these old dilapidated houses. He doesn't get any credit for any of that.
Well, that's just doing your job. I mean, when you talk about getting credit, what are you doing transformationally in order to make and improve the quality of life in the city? We still rank last or next to last with respect to income of our citizens. We still rank high in the area of crime. When I'm talking about bread and butter issues and what you're supposed to do transformally, I don't think he's done a good job.
Well,
but I'm not here to really talk about what he hasn't done. I'm here to tell you about my vision to make a city of Detroit that works for everyone. That's a city that's inclusive.
In fact, let's dig into what your plans are. You have said that the crime problem in Detroit is very connected to poverty. I don't think there's any doubt. There's no getting around that. But that's a long-term answer. What do you do immediately to try to stem crime in Detroit?
Well, one of the issues is that we spend more than $3 billion over the last 8 years fighting crime, and we still have crime at all-time record levels. And so why can we not do anything differently? Why can't we be transformative in terms of intervening and talking with our at-risk youth, with people who are in our community that are committing crime? We know that a major driver of crime in our city is lack of education, lack of opportunities, lack of job skill and training programs. Why not we are not being proactive, going out into the community, talking with these folks and getting them into program, and maybe we have to provide them with a stipend so that they aren't dabbling in crime while we're trying to help them get their lives together. We've got to do something differently. Clearly, the basic reliance upon green light technology has failed because it's a reactive strategy. What I've been advocating for is we've got to be proactive. We've got to go out in the community. We have to reach out to people that are at risk in committing crimes to see if we can do something different in their lives to help them become better citizens. What do we have to lose?
You were, of course, a part of you were not a part of the parade of indictments and prison sentences, but you were a part of the Kwame Kilpatrick administration, one that did lasting and deep damage to. Hang on, I'll get there. But that administration did lasting and deep damage to the city. So how do you convince voters that you're not a return to what was an ugly past?
All they can do is, first of all, Kwame Kilpatrick, his life was what it was. He served his sentence. He's moved on in his life. Detroiters need to move on with their lives as well. What I'm saying is this: when you look at my record and what I've been involved in and what I've done, I was not involved or implicated in any of that madness, which speaks volumes to the level of integrity and transparency that I have. And when they talk about return to those days, all we need to do is look at what's going on in council now. Look at all of the investigations that are surrounding, the current mayor's office with contracts revolving demolition and things of that nature.
Yeah.
People act as if this environment today has been so free of everything. And I'm saying, you got to look at what's going on now. You have to look at my track record and what I have not been involved in, and then you make your determination based on that.
We have a couple of council members that have been in trouble or are currently in trouble. A lot of this seems to circulate around, yes, contracts, but also towing. What do you do to clean up things that remain where you see ethical problems remaining?
Well, I think what we have to do is we first of all have to have people who believe in total transparency, which this administration has not been. They're probably one of the most secretive administrations that we ever had. You also have to put people in place who actually have integrity and have gone through the mill and have come out unscathed in that process, which I have. You also have to create processes which eliminate the impact or influence of money in these things. A major driver and determinant force in corruption in the city of Detroit is the fact that contracts and political pay-for-play is very prevalent still here in the city of Detroit. If we aren't working and aspiring for an ethical environment, and if we don't have an ethical approach to government from the top, then it seeps down onto the bottom and infects the body politic of what goes on here in the city of Detroit.
Anthony, something that I have not heard you address, but I'm sure you've been asked before, maybe I just haven't heard it, but I think it's a critical issue. Right now, the city of Detroit lags much of the rest of the state on COVID vaccine rates. What would you do to get more Detroiters set up to fight COVID-19?
Well, I think the first thing we should have done is we should have used that opportunity, the time period between when COVID hit and when we were waiting on a vaccine, to really talk about how we get people healthy in the city of Detroit. There was no conversation in the city about that. We had the opportunity to talk about healthy food programs, eliminating the disparity in healthcare, and then using young influencers. We're using people that are too old to influence the people who we need to get to. if the population of people that we need to get to are young people in our city, then we should have been using much more younger influencers to talk about that. And then you also have to bring in folk who understand the culture, understand the climate, and how we build the connection between preventative aspects of healthcare and how we get people actually healthy in our community. I think they missed a royal opportunity to really address the overall lack of healthcare access in our city, lack of positive food options. How do we get people healthy in the city? And I think they missed that opportunity.
Anthony, as you know, I always run out of time long before I run out of questions. I'm really grateful, though, for you being here. Good luck the rest of the way in the campaign, and we'll see you again on a future edition of Flashpoint.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You bet. We come back, we'll bring in our roundtable, ask them about the debate situation, too. This is Flashpoint on Local 4.